Ready?
So welcome everyone to our Monday Vision Circle with Deborah hosting and leading us through some important and valuable information. It's always so I'm loving the expansion that's happening in the circle. We're having these little maybe mini workshops, and the next thing I'm going to be doing starting maybe October, September, maybe even as soon as August. I want to bring some of the elder Indigenous women in for you to share with, for them to share with you some things from their culture, and we can share with them some of the things from our work. So we're gonna add that expansion on as we go too. So just take a breath and let that breath relax your body. Bring your focus into the present moment, right where you are on the planet. Breathing in and out of the nostrils, letting the breath do its own thing, no forcing. Letting that breath bring a sense of calm. We are here in this moment, and this moment, and this moment. Connected to our star family, nature, and group of family members, holding our soul, holding the light of our soul in the sacred ground of sovereignty. We're gathered here with our causal teams, the light that began at our birth because of their presence with us. And as we are gathering this fire, our divine family, on the sacred ground of sovereignty and the divine field of all good, that which has been whirling around us in a physical freeze frame, and let our time together make changes as we gather. You're here within the sixfold cocoon, protection, guidance, total nourishment, support, secure channels to our divine. Working as we always do is in the sixth world beyond earth, where our vision is clearer, our energies are unimpeded, and yet we have the authority to speak and declare of our earth bodysuit. We're grateful for Gaia, and we call for all healing and blessings and restoration of her to her original glory too. So right here in circle, Gaia, Sophia, and Grace as our foundation. We open our circle for the work presented to us today. And so it is. So let yourself feel that fire of your divine flow. All that's drawing your attention is on the other side of your fire, being held, blessed as we gather. And then we'll place ourselves in the circle. Your name, where you are on the planet, who you want to put in that field of divine good for healing by name or number, situations, individuals, global, planetary, local. And then we'll be ready to move next. So Sharon Raji Maynard, I'm here on Whidbey Island. Rainy day, lovely day. I'm putting 16 people into the circle, 2 specific family members, multiple global situations, to be held in frozen time until domination is dissolved. And the qualities that I want to activate within the circle are the qualities of the strength of our female gathering. Angelique.
Thank you, Sharon. Hello, everyone from the other side of the planet. Sitting here in the Netherlands, in the western part of the Netherlands, nearby the sea. And I'm really happy to see your lovely faces all again. And I'm looking forward to the beautiful hosting of Deborah. I have here my pencil and my book to write down what's coming to us. And I'm placing into the circle all brothers and sisters who have been in some way involved into domestic violence. And I place into the circle my daughter, Christiana, and my two sons, Rutmer and Milan, and my dear partner, Robert. And the word I'm putting into this beautiful circle is beauty today, praying for beauty. Thank you. And I go to Arlie.
Hi, I'm Arlie. I'm in New Zealand. I would like to bring 7 people to the circle. And the quality I would like to bring is insight. And I will pass to Lynn.
Thanks, Arlie. I am here in beautiful Marina District of Des Moines. It's cloudy today. We actually caught a little bit of rain. I wasn't able to experience it. It happened before I got up this morning, I think. It's hardly measurable, but we haven't had it in 35 days or something. I'm bringing 21 people into the circle, especially 2 family members. And the quality bringing is heart space. And I will call on Sue.
Thank you, Lynn. I'm Sue. I'm in Mount Vernon. We had some rain. Sun is coming back out. Don't think it was enough rain. I think we need more. Going to have to do a rain dance, I guess. Bringing in 7 people. And the song Amazing Grace keeps coming through my mind. So the quality is Amazing Grace. And I'll call on Audrey.
Hi, I'm Audrey and I'm in Wyoming, Pennsylvania. It's overcast here, muggy. I'd like to bring in 17 people and also my daughters, Juliana and McKenna, and my son, Quinn. 3 personal situations and clearing of the children, the world of domination energies. And the word I'd like to bring in today is serendipity. And I would like to tag Sharon.
Thanks, Audrey. Hello, everyone from hot Colorado, maybe 97 degrees. Yeah, hot this week. And I would like to bring 4 people into the circle. 1 personal situation and multiple global situations, and the quality of patience. And I'll call on Deborah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. I'd like to bring in three personal situations, 32 people. I'd like to bring in the heat dome across the United States, and especially those that are in places where they can't cool down, where they have no access to cooler places. And my quality is compassion. And I'd like to call on Denise.
Hello, I'm Denise, and I am in North Carolina. I would like to bring in 19 people, 3 global situations, 2 personal situations, and the quality is inner peace and knowing. Thank you.
I think we've got them all. Arlie, I didn't get your quality. I'm sorry. Do you remember it?
Insight.
Insight. That's a good one. So we place all those name numbered situations, individuals, furry ones into the hands of our healing teams on that field of divine good to dissolve what seemed impossible and is not, to open doors for greater and greater healing and expansion of good. The songs that we'll be singing as we go through this is Strength of Our Female Gathering, Beauty, Insight, Heart Space, Amazing Grace, Serendipity, Patience, Compassion, Inner Peace, and Knowing. So I'm glad we're all here today, and really, really appreciative and grateful to be able to turn the time over to Deborah. It is now yours.
Thank you, Sharon. I had the thought to give this session today when one of the people during one of our sessions said that women aren't heard when they express anger and aren't received well when they express anger. And it got me to thinking that most of us don't express it or express it badly. There's also whole other aspects of that. But I learned a technique in the mid 80s that it's been very useful to me to get through anger and all the emotions that are below it, so that I can really figure out what's going on and address the situation and look at solutions. So I'm not saying that this is going to make you good at being heard and expressing anger, but it's a way to get through so you can resolve your issues. So I grew up in a family where it wasn't allowed to express anger. If you heard someone yell at you, the train was about to hit you and you needed to get out of the way. If you were angry, you were sent out of the room till you calmed down. And I always thought that meant it wasn't okay to express anger. What they meant was get hold of your emotions and come back and we'll discuss it. But I didn't get that second part of it when I was a kid. I just thought, oh, I'm not allowed to get mad. So I was really good at not getting angry at things. So in the early 1980s, I took a workshop that was taught by Barbara DeAngelis and Johnny Gray. And they were at that point married to each other. Barbara DeAngelis had previously been married to David Copperfield, and Johnny Gray went on to write Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. So you might have heard from them. But they were giving a workshop called Making Love Work. And one of the techniques they taught is what they call the love letter technique. And basically, they're saying anger is a very, it's the emotion most removed from the core of emotions, of the bottom of emotions. And most men are good at anger and blame, but women aren't. So they taught what they call the love letter technique. And when you write or say a love letter, this is not to be sent to the person you're writing it to. This is to get your emotions out. So please don't ever send these to the person you're writing them to if you write them. So Sharon is going to show a slide for us. Sharon, if you put up that slide, yeah. Okay, so these are the levels that they talk about of the emotions that are in anger. The first or most outermost emotion is anger and blame. Closer to your inner core, underneath that is hurt and sadness. Then inside that is fear and guilt. And at the bottom, it's love, compassion, and understanding. Generally speaking, most men stay in anger and blame, or a large percentage, and a large percentage of women stay in hurt and sadness. Partly because we're trained to do that. So if we're staying in anger and blame or hurt and sadness, we're not feeling all of the rest of the emotions and really getting through all of the emotions that make up the whole complex, if you will. So, let me see here. And when you write these, you have to do equal segments, equal amounts. So if you write 10 pages of anger and blame, you have to write 10 pages of hurt and sadness, 10 pages of fear and guilt, and 10 pages of love, compassion, and understanding. And that'll make you see where you're not feeling certain emotions and where you're limiting yourself from getting to those levels of understanding. So it's very simple, but it's incredibly profound. So I'll give you an example and I'll see how well I do, because this one just happened. Right as we were starting, my husband came into the room, and the office is right off the bedroom and it's connected to the bedroom. And I had told him I was teaching this class at 5 o'clock, and he knows I don't like to be interrupted when I'm doing this. And so right as Sharon was setting space, he walks in. I don't know if any of you noticed, I turned off my video at that point, but that was just like, dear, what are you doing? And if you're planning on taking a nap or something, this isn't a good time, but whatever. So he left and I was left with all that. So I haven't practiced this one, so we'll just see. So you can write these or say these to yourself or do one-liners. So it'd be, dear hubby, I'm really pissed at you for coming in here right now when I told you that I was going to be teaching at 5 o'clock. Let's see, hang on. Where's this one going? I had another one all planned, but this one's still up and I need to get through it. So this is a good example. So I'm really pissed that you came in when I told you that I had the 5 o'clock class. I'd close the door so you would remember when you were coming in. So I'm not doing a good job, but this is okay. It really hurts because I feel like you're not honoring my space. You're not honoring what I asked for boundaries for this time period. And I'm afraid that you're not honoring me and my boundaries. And I'm afraid that you're just not hearing me and not honoring me. So I haven't gotten through all those because I'm not all the way to love and compassion, but I'm trying to give you an example. Because right now I could go back to anger and blame. And if you find yourself when you're doing that, you go back and start over. And start with anger and blame and write however much you need to do on that. And then fourth, so it still pisses me off that you came in. I just really wish you'd listen or understand and comprehend too. It still really hurts that you don't, when you nod and say you're listening, you're not really listening, you're doing other things. And I'm afraid that I'm not a priority for you to listen to me. Love, compassion, and understanding. And sometimes you're not going to get to love and compassion, but you might get to understanding. And sometimes that's good enough, depending on the situation. I understand that we're going out to dinner after this and you wanted to get ready and be ready because you're probably hungry by now. And I understand that I may not have communicated to you sufficiently to not interrupt the proceedings. So those are the 4 levels, and I'm sure I didn't do a very good job on that one. But you can do them even when you're in traffic and the person cuts you off in traffic and, you know, just misses your bumper by inches. You know, you jerk, how dare you, you know, endanger me and my passengers. I'm really hurt that you don't care enough about you or me to pay more attention to what's going on around you. And I'm afraid that I'm going to be in an accident and be really hurt. And be out of commission. Yeah. And I'm still not at compassion right now for you, but I understand you're probably hurrying because you're on your way to something, but I'm still angry and I need to go back to anger on that one. But you can do one-liners when they happen at the time for that. And you'd be amazed sometimes at what's underneath that. So while I take a few breaths, I'm going to ask if anybody has questions about those levels or those 4 areas.
I put them in the chat to Deborah, so
Thanks.
copy them right out of the chat. I have a comment to make. It was in the mid 80s when I was just beginning to wake up that God wasn't in charge of my life, you know, so I was learning affirmations. And I was in a workshop. I think something like this was introduced. It may have been the same thing that was introduced then, and it has stayed with me how powerful it was. I don't remember the 4 levels, but I do remember starting with anger at whomever, you know, and I was angry at my husband because he left and I was left really high and dry, you know, in many, many ways. And the instructions were to stay with that until you felt complete, even though it may take you a direction you didn't know you would go. And it took me from my husband to my father, who also died when I was 13, to eventually it took me to God. I mean, it was very profound. And again, nothing to be said. Of course, couldn't send to any of those. But I just remember now that you've gone through that. That's always remained with me as a very powerful release for me.
Right, because it's like when you get into writing them down, sometimes you don't know where it's going to take you. So, like it said, if it's 10 pages of anger, then it's 10 pages of hurt and sadness, 10 pages of fear and guilt, 10 pages of love, compassion, understanding. And you may have more blame than anger or more hurt than sadness. It doesn't, depending on what's going on, or more fear than guilt, or more guilt than fear, and love, compassion, and understanding. So they're all kind of rolled into each of the 4 categories, but you don't have to do both depending on the situation. But it is amazing because I'd start writing them and then I'd get through the anger, I thought, and I'd start in to hurt and sadness. And then again, I'm back up in anger. And it could be the same subject, or it could be, like you say, somebody else. It could be, another situation that comes up. And so I just start over and then go through again. And sometimes not sometimes, but it's very revealing and very powerful. And when you really do it and get through all the levers at the bottom, there's, for me, I knew I'd always really gotten to the bottom. When I got to the end of it, I felt complete. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel all of those. I felt like, okay, the issues are this, and this. But I wasn't charged about them at that point. It was like, okay, do I need to talk to my husband more and set stronger boundaries? Do I need to work with the kids on this? Do I need to move? Do I need to, whatever it was, I was like at a point where, okay, now I know I have to address these things. It may be with other people, it may be with myself, it may be with the situation, but when you get to the bottom fully, it's really empowering, and it's very settled because you're not having all of the emotions raging. So that's how I knew when I was at the very bottom. Thank you, Sharon.
How does that sit with some of you? Is there some things you have done that maybe are similar to that, or what does that bring up for you? Let's open it for any kind of conversations. And we have on the line grandmother Hazel, who I think is looking for the call that's going to be at 7 p.m. Central Time. So yeah, I just sent her a note. Yeah. So and also, Deborah, after we do a little conversation here, let's let everybody have, say, 5 minutes to just take.
Right. We're all going to, after we answer questions, we're going to take time, about 5 minutes to write one out. And then we're going to pair you up with someone to share how that was, or read to the other person. And I will say that because, and it's up to you if you want to read it to the other person or not. Because when I took the class, one of the things, they'd pair you up, and we can't trade them because you can't see what somebody else has written. But in the class, I would hand my written stuff to the other person and they would read it to me. And it was very empowering because I didn't know for the most part who they were writing it to. So I could get into, "Dear Joe, you schmuck. How in the world could you even, so I could get into acting. So I could express the anger and all of the emotions that I was never allowed to do as a kid. And it was very freeing for me to do that. And it was also freeing to be on the receiving end for someone to read it with great vigor and compassion and whatever the situation was, if it was anger, whatever, to hear it. And it was like, yeah, that's really how I felt and how I feel about that. And it was very, very enlightening and very empowering. We can't do that here, but we will let you guys share, and if you want to read it to each other, you're welcome to do that, or you can just discuss how it felt. Sharon.
I have 2 questions. So your examples were with people, and often men. I'm noticing, which maybe we all share that in terms of anger. But how I assume, I guess I thought I'd just ask if this can also apply to situations.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So you just go through the whole thing, the same process. And then could you give an example, Deborah, of guilt versus fear? Like the driving one, of course, afraid of being in an accident, or, or with your husband, afraid of not being valued, or whatever the words were that you used. What would guilt, like feel guilty about, or if you could?
Okay, so in the car, this isn't a good one, but I feel guilty. Maybe I was driving slower, or not paying as much attention to my surroundings as I could have, and you were feeling frustrated to being held up behind me. With my husband, guilty that I'm not explaining myself as well as I might to him about my needs and expectations. About when I say I'm teaching this, it means I really don't want you in there between 5 and 6. So do what you need to do. In other cases, it's going to run the the gamut.
Yeah.
Because it's, guilty that maybe I didn't do something or I did something. Usually is the case that for guilt, I did or didn't do something.
Thank you.
Deborah,
Angelique, yeah.
I come up to the point that you can feel guilty about what you're feeling about somebody where you're angry at that same moment in time. So when you feel and you speak out your anger or your frustration, that you at the same time feel guilty about feeling that about that person. And that's a tricky one.
Oh yeah, but it's there. I
Yeah.
feel guilty. How can I be so mad at you when you're sick and I'm frustrated at what's going on when you can't do that?
Mhm.
But I'm still, I feel guilty that I feel angry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sue,
So I did this a long time ago. And I think it actually was at the time about John Gray, because when you said the book, Mars and Venus, I remembered reading a lot about him, from him, written by him. Anyway, I was processing, I was told to write about anger and hate until something else came up. And I just wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote, and probably was 10 pages of all this anger and hate. And what came up from underneath it was deep, deep pain that I'd never touched on or allowed or never touched on it. And that was, it made sense to be angry and stay angry, because it was easier to be angry and blame someone else than it was to look at the pain that was within me that I couldn't do anything about, until I have a process like this where I can write, and it's just writing until I'm done, about anger and blame, until I can get to the pain and suffering. And then write on the pain and suffering. It's giving the feeling a voice. And if I put it on paper, it gets out of my head. I'm processing it. And for me, it's easier, it's more effective to process on paper than it is to talk about it. Because I could talk about it for 6 months and still be in the anger. I write about it for 6 pages and I hit the pain. So and then, it's like the fear comes up because I don't want to go through that kind of pain again. But if I don't go through the pain, I'm going to if I don't go through the fear of facing the pain, having to face the pain again in the future, then I'm not going to live life to the fullest. So what you presented right here, to me, is absolutely crucial to leave the past in the past. But if I don't recognize it, if I don't feel it, if I don't give it words and a language, I can't go through it. And I'm just dragging it around and it shows up in weird ways. So this is really, really critical and absolutely necessary for me. And I had forgotten about it. So thank you, Deborah.
you're welcome. It's incredibly powerful. It's one of the most powerful things I've learned. And I've always thought that this is something we should be teaching in elementary school. Because if the kids can learn how to go through their emotions at a young age, and they don't drag it all forward. And it's not something most of our parents knew how to teach us. Any other questions? Sharon, you're on mute if you were saying something.
I said, nope, I'm ready to do the time.
Okay. Okay, so she's ready to do the timer. So we're going to take 5 minutes. Leave your cameras on, and then we'll revisit it in 5 minutes if people are at a place that they're willing to stop, or if they're on page 2 of anger and need more time.
Yep.
But, this one is a learning exercise, so we may not get through all, but you can come back and redo it too. And it's okay to be non-politically correct in your language. You can call them dweeb units, jerks, whatever, however far you want to go.
That is 5. So Deborah, do you want another 5, 3, 4? What would you like?
Can people hold up fingers to show how much time they need or want? Let's do 3, 4.
We have about 10 seconds left.
Okay, how are people doing? Good? Okay. So I'm laughing because it was so perfect that he came in. Did upset me on teaching, and I was really not grounded when I started. But in going through it, I'm back in my shock, power center. And then when I do them and do them right, I end up just being back in that space that connected instead of just, it's like I'm settled. So what I'm going to ask Sharon now to do for us, first I'll ask if there's any questions before we break into groups of 2. No. Okay, so I'm going to ask Sharon to put us into breakout rooms of 2 people. And so Sharon, I don't know if you want to go with someone or you want me to put me with someone. I don't know if you have something you need to do.
I'm putting you in.
Okay.
there any instructions? Is there any specific way you want the children?
I think each group, you can decide if you want to read them to each other, or if one person wants to read and one person doesn't, that's okay. Or if you just want to share how it felt for you. And I'll leave that up to you.
Okay. And how long are we going to be in there?
Well, what time is it?
If we did 5, that's going to give each of them a little more, 2 minutes each and a 1 minute call for closure, or we could do 6 minutes.
I think 6.
Got it. So I'll send a message in to tell you when you have a minute left, which means you better hurry up and finish in closure. Is that good?
Does 6 sound like enough time for people?
I think usually that's a good.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody. See you back in 6.
A mistake. So anybody want to share how that was?
I'll go ahead and share. Am I muted?
Oh, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I paired up with Lynn, which was very interesting. We're both dealing with some physical things, but I have used this technique before. It's very powerful, but like I said to Lynn, it's always good to take out the spiritual toolbox and dust it off. And doing the process just now really put into perspective what I'm dealing with right now, which is some abnormalities in an MRI in my brain and some lost vision going in and out of my right eye. And it's definitely put me through stages of anger, hurt, sadness, fear, and then love. I think the most important thing that came out of it, because I had been processing a lot of this, but the love and understanding, and just a really deeper understanding, which has also come about from Deborah, of my life's journey. And the love is truly, truly focused right now in my life on love of self. And it really printed it out for me very clearly. So thanks, Deb, for bringing that up and teaching it and reminding me of the technique.
Thanks, Denise. Sharon Alexander, you were going to say something?
Oh, just because I was kind of already talking, but I don't need to. I like the stay in your own lane that Sharon just shared. And this was helpful, as I shared with Sue, in the time frame we had. It was, I didn't come to a new or an aha or uncover anything. It was really just bringing, I guess, form and structure to all the stuff that rambles through my mind. So that was helpful too. And I just tried to do the same amount for each of the first of the 4 categories. So I found it a very, I really enjoyed the activity. So thank you. And I'd like to spend more time with it. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'll go. I found that when I was writing about my situation, I felt how I feel when I'm in that situation all throughout my body. So it ignited again. So the tenseness in the spine, the shoulder blades, everything just reignited. But as I started writing the compassion, it started easing up because okay, this is almost like a resolution, a way to work through this. And it's just started melting away. So that was really nice.
Thank you.
I'll go. well, my daughter-in-law's pushing a lot of buttons. And my niece came to visit that I haven't seen for a few years, and they're thinking about moving out of Florida, but it's not because of the politics, because she just loves the politics of Florida. I have a lot of compassion for people who see something totally opposite from how I see something. And my understanding and my compassion is that they literally were seeing the opposites and thinking we're seeing the truth. And I have compassion for that because I can only love my daughter-in-law and my niece. I do love them. But what this did was it brought up all my fear about where I'm afraid our politics and new laws are taking us. And it scares me. It terrifies me. And the safe place for me to go with that is anger. And I have compassion for a lot of people, but I'm just fucking angry at a lot of people. And I'm not ready to let it go. That's life. It's just the way it is.
Thank you, Sue. So it's, go ahead, Lynn.
Okay. Thank you, Deborah, for the process. I'm a person who was raised also with it's not okay to be angry, and I've been in many situations in my life, abusive situations where I wasn't angry. I didn't know how to be angry. I didn't know how to even touch into anger because it was so suppressed, and I've worked on that. But I like having a process like this that feels like it can get at different layers. I could do this and maybe the next day do it again and get maybe deeper. Or so thank you for the process. Does it have a name? Is there?
They called it the love letter technique.
Oh, that's
as I
right.
mentioned, this
That's
is
right.
not a love letter that you send
Right.
to the person or situation to the person. If you write it to a person, do not send it to them.
Well, it's almost kind of as I went through mine, it's almost, I can see it as a love letter to myself because it's allowing myself to get into my feelings and honoring who I am. And so I would think of it from that standpoint when I think of a love letter.
Right. Thank you. Audrey.
I almost think that after you're done writing it and everything's all complete, you could also burn it. Give it to the fire to totally release it.
Yeah, because when you're done and you're complete, then it allows you, I mean, you can let it go, but it allows you to then decide how you want to approach that situation. And the thing about giving it to someone is if you were really good and went through the whole thing, it could express it, but not everybody would receive it right. And sometimes we're not even-handed and there might still be more anger left and not a whole thing. So that's why it's just burn it, let it go. And then as you're inspired to deal with the situation or what the resolution would be, whatever it may be, to deal with it. But I like Audrey's idea to burn it.
I do that a lot. Every session I do, that paper, once I turned it over to the, recap, gets burned in my sacred fire. This is really about owning it's your story. It's my story. This isn't their story.
Right.
You to get to your story, right? And get to that place where then what would you be coming to is that, what do I want my next story to be?
Okay.
Bring you right back into, like, for example, a reality shift statement, bring balance, to start another anchor in a new beginning.
And you want to come, if it's a person, you know, as Sharon says, you know, what's the new reality statement for what you want in the situation, and try and being able to come from love, which with that other person really makes it much easier to bring changes and expressing what your needs are. If your needs haven't been expressed, you need to express them, but you can express them in a loving way then, as opposed to a not loving way, which sometimes we're at. Anything else?
I think it's an example of staying in your own lane, because there are some relationships where the resolution isn't in the other
Right.
person. And so waiting for them acknowledge or to affirm or whatever, it keeps you in their lane rather than in your lane. And so, you know, there are definitely relationships that's yours. The resolution is you, not about even making the relationship different or better.
Right.
It's-
Absolutely. With that, I just want to say thank you for joining us, and dealing with my slightly off-kilter discussion after.
But you know, we're not the only ones, Deborah.
Yes.
What if we gather this energy, the shift from acknowledging the anger, the acknowledgement, the shift, it's ours, and whatever it takes for us to come to that place of reconnection to love is absolutely possible. It's back to good mind. So that energy of the possibility, absolute possibility, that out there in humanity, here is our intent, that the anger, the hurt, the pain, the blame, the division that we see out in the world dissipates with self-accountability and love. And that go out into our worlds, our communities, our families, our homes, from that field of divine good. So it is.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, everyone. Till we meet again.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thanks.
Thank you, Deb. Love you guys.
Wonderful,
Deb.
everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.